3, 2, 1. We are live. Coming to you live. Has it been live? Say what's up to the people, Dad.
Welcome to our very sharp audience that wants something beyond the usual punditry, some in-depth, straight-from-the-shoulder analysis. In these historic times, that is more important than ever. So welcome.
Isn't the expression straight from the hip? Straight from the shoulder.
Straight from the shoulder.
Oh, okay. So that's like even better.
Some people shoot from the hip, but
right.
We shoot from the shoulder.
Oh, I see. Okay, so the shoulder is better.
Yes.
No pun intended. You just got shoulder surgery, and now this is our, second or third show without a, whatchamacallit?
Shoulder is...
what's it called? Brace. Sling.
Yeah, it's gone. The sling is
Hello.
gone.
Bing, bing, bing. Wake up.
The sling is gone. And I'm doing physical therapy twice a week. They're putting me through the rigors, and hopefully in a month or two, I'll be able to start training again for the Senior Olympics.
I want to give some quick shout outs to Pam from Reno, Nevada, Jim Blowers, Michael Gonzalez, Suzanne AP, Michelle Martinez, Axel Moreno, some awesome folks in the chat. All right, let's get right into it. Our
I'm always ready.
Topic of the night, and our main topic by far, newly released emails from Jeffrey Epstein suggest Trump, not from Jeffrey Epstein, written by Jeffrey Epstein, suggest Trump knew about abuse of underage girls by Epstein, a bombshell development that escalates scrutiny of Trump's ties to Epstein.
You know, these emails that have been released apparently are only a fraction of the total corpus of emails and other Epstein documents that apparently the Justice Department and the FBI have been sitting on. Most of these did not come from Justice or FBI, Sam. Do you know where they came from?
Well, I know these were released by House Democrats.
Yeah, but where did they get them in the first place? From the Epstein estate.
Oh.
Yeah, they had to go because of the stonewalling.
Interesting.
I'm going to give you an infamous quote from the late, not-so-great Richard Nixon. In the midst of the Watergate scandal, he said prophetically, "It is usually the cover-up that gets you even more than the act."
Right.
And we are seeing one of the most ham-handed, incompetent, self-defeating, counterproductive cover-ups we have ever seen. It makes Richard Nixon's cover-up look genius compared to this absolute stumble bum. You know, this is the Keystone Cops trying to cover something up. You know, what did Trump say about the Epstein files when he was campaigning for president?
That he would release them?
Yeah, he had no problem, although, as always, he backtracked a bit and said, you know, I care more about the JFK files. I don't want to hurt anybody. But basically, he committed to releasing them.
Those JFK files and MLK files were bombshells, weren't they?
Yeah.
That's a joke.
I know,
I'm being
it's
sarcastic.
A joke. What did Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, his hand-picked Trump loyalists say?
They're sitting right on her desk.
Right on her desk. She's ready to release them. Then the ridiculous cover-up begins.
Right.
Oh, no, I really didn't have these files on my desk. In fact, there are no such files.
Yeah.
And then Donald Trump, I don't know how many times he said it. Same thing he said about catastrophic climate change, right? It's all a hoax. It's all a Democratic hoax. Just like Russia's intervening in the 2016 election. That was all a hoax. Or Joe Biden winning in 2020. That was all a hoax. Well, it turns out it's not a hoax, and we're going to talk about the emails that have been released. But the cover-up doesn't stop there.
Oh.
Trump continues to berate members of his own party.
Right.
Right, calling them all kinds of names, you know, if they're going to vote to release the Epstein files.
Apparently there's going to be a vote, Mike Johnson said, on the release next week. I almost don't buy it. I don't know.
It's hard to believe. This is the first time Mike Johnson has actually stood up to Trump. But I think his hand was forced. You know, they had the discharge petition. It had a majority, 218 votes, and there really wasn't much he could do to stop it. So this makes him look good. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm being transparent. I'm calling for a vote. But he had no choice.
I think Trump and the White House are trying to weasel their way into the House and some of the more loyal MAGA folks and convince them, I think, not to vote to release the files.
Well, here's the thing.
Oh.
The cover-up continued.
Right.
Who did they meet with? The Attorney General, the head of the FBI. Who did they meet with?
Lauren Boebert, I thought, too.
Yes, one of the 4 Republicans who were essential to signing on to the petition. And when spokesperson Levitt was asked about it, he said, I can't discuss, what goes on, in conversations with the president. Right. As if anyone could believe she's a backbencher. She's not, one of the great leaders of the House. Why would they call her in for this incredibly top-level meeting with law enforcement officials, if not to pressure her to withdraw her name from the discharge position? If you think otherwise, Sam, what have I got to sell you?
Oh, quiet. You say that every day.
So the cover-up continues.
Right.
And the problem is, did Nixon's cover-up work?
No.
Forced him it was so bad it forced him to resign. And it was, the cover-up more than anything else that destroyed him, although what he was doing was probably bad enough unto itself. And this is the nightmare on Elm Street for Donald Trump. Epstein, even in death, is Donald Trump's Freddy Krueger. He can't escape him. He can huff and he can puff, but he is not going to blow this house down and suppress the information about Jeffrey Epstein that relates to Donald Trump. It's already a lot out there, and apparently there's a lot more to come. It's going to be very interesting. We already have reports that Republicans are breaking ranks for the first time since Donald Trump took office. It looks like, at least according to reporting, that a significant number of Republicans are going to break ranks and vote to release the Epstein material. That unto itself is a pretty important and astounding development, right, Sam?
Yeah, I think, Republicans can weasel their way out of healthcare debates and climate change debates. It's hard to weasel yourself out of a child predator debate. It's pretty black and white.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the irony. For years, contrary to all the evidence, what have Republicans been accusing the Democrats of?
Being pedophiles. And of course they're not. None of that held water. And now they're entoiled in their own pedophilia scandal. And this, isn't like something complicated or difficult to understand like trade and tariffs. Right.
As you said, this is clear cut. There is virtually nothing worse than sex trafficking underage women and exploiting them sexually.
I'd like to add that, you talked a lot about the election and what Pam Bondi said recently. Trump has been on this Epstein stuff for 10 years plus now. He brought this onto himself. It seems finally there is some justice in this. Something that Trump lied and rambled about is finally coming back to bite him. Most of the time, he can lie and ramble on about stuff and get out of it.
Freddy Krueger.
It's finally coming back. And like I said, it's not just the election of 2024. It's not just Pam Bondi. You find clips of him back in 2015 going on about Jeffrey Epstein, and it's coming back to bite him. I have to say, even though as horrific as the scandal is generally speaking, it does feel kind of righteous that finally some of Trump's BS is coming back to bite him.
Yes, and the more he tries, it's like, you got a rope around your neck, and the more you try to, worm your way out of it, the tighter it becomes and the more deadly it becomes. And that is exactly what Trump is experiencing. Remember, we've talked about this many times. This is a guy who for more than 50 years has never been held accountable for anything.
Right.
And now he somehow believes, just like everything else, he's going to somehow slip out of that noose. Instead, the noose is getting tighter and tighter, and he looks worse and worse. And as you point out, it's not just the Democrats.
What do you mean? Oh, the
Republicans
right.
are all the rank and file Republicans.
Right.
Are also demanding release of the files. 92% want the files released and think there's more to this than meets the eye. You can't get 92% of people to agree on spelling their name. But the one thing that seems to get broad bipartisan agreement, nothing else, is the Epstein scandal. And now it's becoming, as you say, a self-inflicted Trump scandal.
Can I ask you a question, though?
Yes.
You know, with all his lies about immigrants or Obama, right, he's able to wiggle out of that whole racist, xenophobic tag of him, right? Why 10 years ago did he start bringing up Epstein if he had such close ties to him? Like, wouldn't he foresee that eventually, if this Epstein stuff really came to the surface, at very least his friendship with him would come to the surface? Like, I get why he did the Obama stuff. I get why he does the immigrant stuff.
Get all
I get
that
why he lies
stuff.
about trade. Yeah, he can wiggle out all that. But why? I don't get why he brought it up if he knew that he had such a close relationship with this guy.
He thought he could pin it on the Democrats somehow. That this was, another Democratic hoax, a Democratic scandal. I think that's what he had in mind. And remember, he thinks he's invincible.
Did he think that, Bill Clinton was going to get most of the heat for this or something?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton or some other, George Soros, although, hard to imagine. But yes, he thought he could pin this on Clinton and other Democrats. Absolutely. And he believed, like everything else, he could somehow worm out of it. This is a guy who lives in luxury, has a private plane, has a huge mansion, has golf courses, and doesn't pay any taxes.
What?
He doesn't pay any income taxes. I don't get it. I don't see how it's possible, how he worms out of that, how he doesn't get audited, how he doesn't get slapped in jail. But somehow, just like everything else, including 34 felony convictions, which seem to have had no effect on anything, he worms out of it all. Even, when he was found by the Justice Department way back in 1973 to violating the Fair Housing Act for discriminating against minorities in his rental business, Starting then, he wormed out of that. He's wormed out of 5 bankruptcies, wormed out of, convictions, wormed out of a huge financial finding, wormed out of a finding of sexual abuse and defamation, wormed out of the Access Hollywood tape when he claimed he can do anything he wants with women, including grab them by their private parts, wormed out of more than 20 women accusing him of all kinds of sexual misbehavior. And by the way, all of that's going to become relevant in a few minutes.
So the White House's response to all this is that the redacted victim in a lot of these emails, which they leaked, they quoted that victim who said that Donald Trump never did anything wrong, and therefore these emails are really nothing. It's just Jeffrey Epstein gibbering through email.
Couple of things about that. One, you don't go after Donald Trump. People know you go after Donald Trump, you're in for a world of hurt. With all his resources, he's going to go after you. So that could be one explanation. The other explanation is something that's really been missed by a lot of the commentary. The thrust of the email so far, and there's much more to come, I believe, although they may succeed in covering up the rest of it. But what's come out is it's not that Trump committed any crime, not that he abused Guthrie, but that he knew that this horrific criminal activity, this horrendous, destructive exploitation of girls was going on and lied about it. That's what the emails suggest.
Right. He's the Joe Paterno in this situation, not the Jerry Sandusky. Epstein is the Sandusky, Trump is the Paterno.
Exactly.
Okay.
So all this notion, he didn't do anything wrong, he didn't commit a crime, that's not what's at issue here. What is issue here is it's like what Senator Howard Baker said at the beginning of the Watergate investigation. What did the president know and when did he know it?
Right.
That's what's at stake here, not whether he committed crimes, which so far there's no indication that he did so, although that's also wrong.
Oh.
That's also wrong.
Tell me.
A woman, I believe her name is Williams, just came out In fact, she came out a year ago, but because of all of this, it's suddenly come to the fore again. And here's what she said. In 1993, she was Epstein's girlfriend, heaven help her. And Epstein took her, this 93, to...
I was 1 year old.
Yeah, I was already old, but that's not the story. To Trump Tower, because they were buddies. He could go right up and see Donald Trump, and that he groped her against her will. So, yes, there are accusations out there that Trump, that's a crime. You can't do that.
Right.
Obviously, the statute of limitations has gone, but at least he is being credibly accused of a crime. Now, put this in context. She said she took a lie detector test and passed it, and she told the story to others. Of course, he denies it, but put this in context. Remember what Trump said in his own admission on tape? I can do anything I want, including grabbing women by their private parts, because I am a star. She's not the only woman to accuse him of this. More than 20 women have accused him. You know, they're not all, you know, it staggers the imagination to say they all made this up. They're all liars. And he was civilly liable in court by a jury of his peers for sexually abusing E. Jean Carroll. So put all this in context. So yes, there is at least an accusation out there of Trump committing a crime.
And, you know, not that this is a crime, but I think in the emails as well, there was talk of Trump in Jeffrey Epstein's kitchen with a bunch of, who knows, girls, women in bikinis. Again, that's not a crime,
right?
But it's a little creepy and a little suspect, at least.
I'm not a lawyer.
You're not?
No, and you've heard me say
I think,
that.
Look, you've said that so many times. I think it's time for you to go back to school and get your law degree.
I've thought about that, but maybe I'm too old. So here's the thing. I may be wrong, and I'm sure we have lawyers in our brilliant audience who could correct me or corroborate me. I believe it is a crime to witness a felony and not report it. And if he actually witnessed, and there's no proof that he did, but if he actually witnessed Jeffrey Epstein abusing underage girls and didn't report it, that could be a crime. I'm not saying that happened, but that's another possibility here. There's still so much.
But it's also just morally bankrupt. If you knew a guy who was, at least at one point, your best friend, who was not only a pedophile, but was running a pedophile ring,
yes,
the fact that you didn't do something in your power to report him or something just shows how morally bankrupt you are.
And then you lie about it.
Right.
Continually. All right. What I want to do now is actually read some of these emails instead of just talk about them.
Okay.
And we know they're just a fraction, and none of them are before 2011. But remember, in 2011, Trump is 4 years away from being a candidate. So the idea that the Democrats would have fabricated this to smear Donald Trump's presidential ambitions is nonsense. And apparently there are even earlier emails, and there's also earlier damning stuff as well, including that birthday card we talked about before with this lewd image of a woman talking about, you know, they have a lot in common, they have shared secrets, with her private parts being exposed. I think it was in either 2002 or 2003 where Trump said, Jeffrey Epstein's a great guy, we both love beautiful women, although he likes them on the young side. So this stuff, long before, the presidency was even a gleam in Trump's eyes. All right, so the first one is from April 2011. This is from Jeffrey Epstein to his collaborator, Ghislaine Maxwell. And we're going to talk about her in a moment as well. Quote, I want you to realize that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Victim, spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. In there, 75% there, in his house. And does Maxwell deny that? Quite the contrary. She says, quote, I have been thinking about that. This is doubly important, not only for Donald Trump, but also for Maxwell. When she had this softball interview with Trump's former attorney, who's now a high official in Justice, Todd Blanche, she said she never saw Trump He was never at Epstein's house. Well, contemporary emails directly contradict that. And by the way, in addition to horrendous sex trafficking, she was also charged with perjury. The charges were dropped because they wanted to focus on the sex trafficking. But Maxwell is not someone with any credibility, even though, Todd Blanche treated her like, she was echoing the gospel. Let's go on. This is an email from 2016, 2015. This is an email from Michael Wolff, the reporter who specializes in high-level gossip. I think you should let him hang himself, referring to Trump. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, that gives you valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. In other words, it was, generally accepted. Of course, he's been to the House and on the plane. And if he denies that, that gives Epstein ammunition against Trump. Epstein responds, if we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it would be? I hear CNN planning to ask Trump about his relationship with you, either on air or in scrum afterwards. Did CNN ask him in the debate? Or anywhere? No, they chickened out. Didn't talk about Epstein at all.
Can I pause for a second? I want to give a huge shout out to George Politis, who just donated 159 Australian dollars.
Wow, how much is that US?
104. So that's a very generous donation, George. We really appreciate that. Okay, just wanted to shout out George.
February 2017, 3 weeks after Trump took office. Here's another one who gets implicated in this. Lawrence Summers, former Treasury Secretary under Clinton, is communicating with Epstein. And Summers says, it's okay. Said of the new president, quote, he didn't wreck the world and avoided scandal. It's just 3 weeks after he took office. Epstein then responds, quote, recall I've told you, I've met some very bad people. None as bad as Trump. Not one decent cell in his body.
Who said that?
Epstein said that of Trump. Talk about the pot calling the kettle.
I'm going to say, when Jeffrey Epstein is calling you evil and crazy, God, that's a whole nother, that's crazy.
In a later email, Epstein says, you see, I know how dirty Donald is. My guess is that non-lawyers, New York biz people have no idea what it means to have your fixer flip. They're talking about the payoff, the hush money payoff to the porn star. In a later email, he says, yes, of course, Donald Trump knew about the girls. Donald Trump flat out knew about the girls. He also said about Mar-a-Lago, Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member, ever. Of course he knew about the girls, as he asked Ghislaine to stop. He knew about the girls. This notion of asking him to resign was bogus. And Trump has also changed his story several times. First he said, I broke with Epstein in early 21st century because he was a creep. Well, he'd been a buddy of Epstein since the 80s, and he suddenly discovered, these many years later that he was a creep. Did that hold any water, Sam?
I wasn't listening.
All right. Then he changed his story again, and he said he broke with Epstein because he was recruiting young girls from Mar-a-Lago. Well, think about that. Not only, has he fundamentally changed the story so there's no credibility whatsoever anywhere, but if he knew Epstein was recruiting young girls from Mar-a-Lago, what did he think Epstein was doing with them?
Jeffrey Epstein just told us he knew.
He knew
about the girls.
But, even if you don't want to credit Epstein saying he knew.
Right.
Obviously, Trump's admission that Epstein was stealing young girls from Mar-a-Lago proves that he knew.
And again, why, if you had even one moral bone in your body, if you knew that some guy, some billionaire who likes some young is...
He already admitted he likes some young.
Right, is weirdly stealing young girls from your, what is it, his golf country club.
Country club.
Again, wouldn't you do something about that? I mean, again, I know, if you say something publicly, maybe Jeffrey Epstein can sue you, but I'm sure there are ways to report things to the police anonymously, right? Like, or there's got to be something he could have done.
Of course, if you had a moral bone in your body. And remember, this is long before, this is around 2003 or so, 2004, a decade before Trump became a serious politician. So there aren't any politics involved in this. This isn't something, made up for political purposes. This is something that as an honest, moral citizen, Trump should have been doing something about.
I really have to say, Epstein calling Trump nuts and evil, and again, that really shocks me, because I mean, how more evil can you be than not just a pedophile,
right,
but someone who runs when someone who is a pedophile who's running a pedophile ring calls you crazy and evil, God, you must be crazy and evil. I mean, that's a whole nother level.
That is a whole other. I just want to repeat again to burn it into our consciousness. This is not Epstein. This is Trump's own mouth recorded. It's in there in the New York Magazine, 2002. Said he had known Epstein for, quote unquote, 15 years. 15 years, right?
Right.
And all of a sudden he discovered he was a creep, 3 years, a couple of years later. And he called him, quote, a terrific guy, unquote, and added, quote, it is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. Put that together, as you said, Sam, with Epstein stealing young girls from Mar-a-Lago. And, you don't have to have an IQ over 50 to see what was going on.
Ruben in the chat said that's like Hannibal Lecter calling Jeffrey Dahmer evil.
Yes. And again, if you don't believe all these things coming from Epstein, maybe you should be skeptical, but think of the context.
Right.
And this is really important. Think of who he's talking about. Someone he knew Trump for decades, was close to him, was photographed with him, was filmed with him. Someone who Trump said was a terrific guy, talked about his preference for younger people. Trump is also someone who bragged about doing anything he wants with women, who's been accused by over 20 women of sexual harassment and abuse, who was found civilly liable for sexual abuse. So this isn't, someone accusing someone whose history is totally clean, totally morally upright. This all fits in the context of everything we know about Donald Trump.
All right, do you want to move on to reports about Ghislaine?
Yes.
Okay, so CNN is reporting that Ghislaine Maxwell is receiving unusual privileges in prison, from unlimited toilet paper to enhanced living conditions, even as scrutiny of her ties to Epstein and Trump, as we just spoke about, resurface.
This is another element of the cover-up. As I mentioned, Todd Blanche, the Justice Department official, former Trump lawyer, conducted this softball interview with Maxwell. Not even close to an interview you would expect with a DOJ official and a convicted person of heinous, awful crimes. And it had one purpose, right? What was the purpose of that interview, Sam?
Trying to get Trump's name cleared.
Exactly. And as we showed, she's, certainly known as a liar, even though, they dropped that charge. But, the evidence showed she was a liar. And clearly, if Epstein's email showed nothing else, she was lying again. She knew that Trump had been in Epstein's house. It was proven by contemporaneous emails. So what does she get in return? It has to be a quid pro quo. There's no other explanation.
That's what I was going to say. There's no other reason, again, why they're continuing to treat her so well if they still want more from her.
Well, even before that, there's no reason for her to be transferred
Right.
to a prison farm. In fact, the regulations are against it. Someone convicted of the kind of crime that she's convicted of, according to the regulations, should never be sent to a prison farm.
Right.
That's not appropriate for someone convicted of a felony of that scale. She should have stayed where she was. And there is yet to be any explanation from the administration of what justified that transfer other than this quid pro quo. But as you say, it gets worse. Not only is she at this prison farm where she's deliriously happy as compared to where she was before, but this person convicted of a heinous crime who shouldn't be there in the first place is getting special privileges. Now, unlimited toilet paper may not seem like much, right, Sam?
But in prison,
it's a huge deal, particularly in a women's prison.
Right.
It is a huge deal. Ordinary prisoners, get a couple of rolls a week and really have to struggle to preserve it or have to spend money to buy it. She gets unlimited. Why in the world would she get that kind of special privilege?
like I said, they must want more out of her or to keep her quiet, one or the other.
And there's all kinds of other. Her visitors get special privileges. She gets the use of the chaplain as an office. Prisoners were removed from near her cell or in her cell. She was able to interact with a puppy. And here's the worst thing, I think. Again, this is all reporting. It's not my own investigation, but it's lots of outlets have reported this, not just one, that she is writing a request to Trump for a commutation, which means her prison term, which is still mostly yet to be served of 20 years, gets wiped out. And the warden is helping her, assisting her with this commutation.
What?
Yes, that's what the reporting says. And their explanation for all of this is, we have to keep her safe because she's a target. Well, extra toilet paper doesn't help keep her safe, does it? Having a puppy doesn't help keep her safe. Special privileges for visitors doesn't help keep her safe.
Right.
Having the warden help her with a commutation petition doesn't help keep her safe. So number one, they have no justification for sending her there in the first place. And number two, they have no justification that has any credibility for most of these special privileges. It is corruption at the highest possible level.
And what's remarkable about all this is that if these emails didn't come out, our main topic would be the shutdown's over. But this has totally clouded the fact that the shutdown is over. Everybody, all the news organizations, just chatter online is all talking about the Epstein emails and the
Freddy
government,
Krueger,
the government shutdown, which was the longest in history.
I know, longest by far.
really ended with a beep.
Yeah, didn't end with a bang, but with a whimper, to quote a famous line. How much time do we have?
We're good. Do you want to talk about a federal judge?
Yeah,
okay,
I can do that real fast in a minute or two.
You don't need to do it real fast. We're chilling. Don't worry about it.
What time is it?
Let me handle the show running. Okay.
Yes, boss.
Yes. So let's get to the next topic. The only non-Epstein topic of the day. A federal judge appeared openly skeptical of the Justice Department's attempt to keep Lindsay Halligan as prosecutor in the Comey and Letitia James case, pressing DOJ lawyers on political motives. No.
This is something that Trump didn't even try to hide. He explicitly pressured his toady Attorney General, Pam Bondi, handpicked to do his bidding. As I predicted, that Gates, was a feint and he would pick Bondi. Pressured her. You're not supposed to do that. It's not illegal, but it breaches what's supposed to be the wall of separation between the political side of the government and the Department of Justice. Pam Bondi is not Trump's lawyer. I repeat, Pam Bondi is not Trump's lawyer. Trump has his own White House lawyer on the political side. Whose lawyer is Pam Bondi, Sam?
Mine.
Yes, she's supposed to be the lawyer for the American people. So Trump pressures her to take revenge against enemies. And the very conservative, longtime prosecutor that's in charge of the case says, I'm not going to do it. It's too flimsy. There really isn't a case here. And guess what happens to him?
Tell me.
He's forced out. And guess who's put in his place?
Tell me.
Lindsay Halligan. And how many cases has she ever prosecuted at the time she was made U.S. Attorney? Zero. And she is the sole person who goes to the grand jury to prosecute. You know, but the story gets worse. I mean, it's hard to imagine how these things gets worse. It's worse than putting someone totally unqualified, totally inappropriate into that position for the sole purpose of making a flimsy case forced by Trump for political revenge. But it gets worse. The lawyers are charging, and I think very credibly, that she was illegally put in that position because there's a 120-day window to put in an acting U.S. attorney. That window had passed, and you can't put a new person in who hasn't been approved by the Senate. And she had been approved by nobody, never would have been approved, even by the Republican Senate. That would have been a bridge too far. And she's the sole person who brought the charge. So I think the judge is rightly very skeptical of whether she was legally appointed, number one, or number two, whether this was a vindictive prosecution, whether they decided to prosecute and then searched for something. Look, if you have all the resources of the federal government and you're searching to find something on someone, I don't care who you are, you're going to find it, right?
Right.
No one is 100%, pure as the driven snow. And boy, they had a reach to find the flimsiest possible indictments, which is why Seibert, the conservative veteran prosecutor, declined to prosecute, and they had to put in this Trump toady to do it. There's another thing that's astounding.
Tell me.
The judge, who is a senior judge, I think he's 77, was appointed by Bill Clinton way back when. So, he's not someone currently involved in politics at all. It's pretty impartial. He wanted to review the grand jury transcripts. Remember, only Allan went to the grand jury. And guess what? 2 hours are missing. It ends at 4:28, and the grand jury went on for another 2 hours.
Wow.
No transcript. Now, again, the administration says, well, the only thing that happened during those last 2 hours was the panel deliberating among themselves. Maybe yes, maybe no. But, of course, we have no idea of knowing since there's no record. This reminds me a bit of Rosemary Woods. You know who she was?
No idea.
Richard Nixon's secretary, and she was transcribing Oval Office conversations, including a critical one, and there was a 18-minute gap. That's never been explained. This is a 2-hour gap, and the explanation, doesn't hold water. I was listening to a terrific attorney. He used to be Trump's attorney, so he's not exactly, a lunatic left-winger. Ty Cobb, the guy with the huge white mustache.
The guy who looks like a cartoon character.
Yeah. He doesn't have a 357 lifetime batting average, but maybe higher in the courts.
Right.
And he said he's certain these cases are going to be tossed. And I don't know if they could recharge Comey because they got in at the very last moment of the statute. And there may be a grace period when you can recharge. I'm not sure. They can recharge James because there's a 10-year statute of limitations. But the judge could dismiss the cases with prejudice, in which case you can't recharge. Very, very interesting to see what happens here.
And don't forget, every accusation that Trump makes, he's been crying against political prosecution against himself and witch hunts. Every accusation he does is an admission to something he already did, is currently doing, or will do in the future. And this is just another example of that.
The greatest example of projection in American history.
All right. With that, we will move on to our question portion of our episodes. Wait till you guys see this. What do you see the the bottle of diet soda my dad's drinking from today?
I don't want to set a bad example.
Look at this. He came in today and he put that down on the desk and said, "You're going to drink from that?" And he said, "Why not?"
Why not?
So here he goes. Let's see it. He did it. 2 liters straight to the dome, folks.
With one arm.
With one arm. Let's see. What was I saying?
Don't try this at home.
Right. Yes, housekeeping. We've got almost 1,500 people watching. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Turn on that notification bell so you know we're live. Don't forget to throw the stream a like. It helps with the algorithm and such. Remember, in our question portion, members and donations get priority. So become a member. Or if you don't feel like being a member and you just got one burning question on your mind, throw us a donation. It helps keep the stream alive. All right.
One more thing before we get to the questions.
Okay.
Again, give you a little historical perspective. What did Richard Nixon drove from the presidency was, yes, the crime, but what really undid him was the attempt at cover-up.
Everybody's laughing at you for drinking straight from a 2-liter bottle.
I'm always happy to be a subject of raucous laughter.
Patrick Murray says, "Bro, get a cup."
I'm afraid a cup will spill. That's why I brought the whole bottle.
Yeah, he likes drinking out of bottles. I don't think I've ever seen, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think I've ever seen him drink from a cup.
Probably never. Except when I drink my silk milk.
Oh, right. He does drink silk milk.
I do
from a
drink
cup.
silk
And when
milk.
you like force him to drink water,
Right.
he'll like sip from a cup. But all his soda he drinks out of bottles or cans.
This is true.
Yeah. All right.
Again, don't emulate this at home.
Right. Our first question is from member Mary McHugh. They say, "Professor, what do you think the effect is on MAGA supporting regarding Trump's comments about the HB1, I think it's the H-1B visa, and bringing foreign talent over because Americans can't perform the jobs?"
You know, never underestimate Trump's ability to contradict himself. You know, that's one of his great talents. And he always says, you know, I'm an America First president. We don't need these foreigners here unless you're a white Afrikaner, of course, especially probably if you participated in apartheid, which is not ancient history. It's not ancient history. It didn't end until the 1980s, you know. So a lot of these Afrikaners might have been involved, or their parents might have been involved, but, you know, we got to bring them over here. Yeah, so this is a total contradiction of what Trump believes is his America First approach. Again, it's probably too obscure to be a major crack in his base, but we're beginning to see, you know, through the Epstein thing, through the problems with the economy, through the unpopular tariffs, you know, some spider webs in the base, and you know, I can't believe the base would be happy with this.
I did see during a recent Laura Ingraham interview, she pushed him a little bit on that. You know, she was more America First. She's like, well, can't Americans do these jobs? And of course, he didn't really have an answer to her, but he was pushing back, defending the H-1B visa. Yeah,
speaking of, you know, Trump supporters turning on Megyn Kelly, you know, who's always been a big defender of Trump. She said, well, you know, this is a big admission from her. You know, I'm not sure this shows, I'm paraphrasing, Trump did anything wrong, but it sure doesn't look good.
That's in reference to what?
The Epstein materials.
Gotcha. My understanding of the H-1B visa is it's also just about population. You know, we have a big country with many industries. Americans alone, again, this also goes back to the myths about immigrants. The American-born population alone cannot fill every job in the economy.
Oh, I agree. I think it's a good thing.
Right.
My only point was how it contradicts
of course,
everything else that Trump claims to stand for.
Right.
I wasn't saying I'm opposed to it.
No, I'm just, I didn't say you were.
Right, I know, but I just wanted to clarify that.
Member Diane Kastner says, Trump seems to get away with so much. We talked about that earlier. But doesn't international law prohibit his attacks on these so-called drug boats? Why is nothing happening?
Yeah. Again, you know, Trump thinks he can do anything he wants, including extrajudicial killings, and get away with it. And so far he has. Absolutely. Again, I'm not an international lawyer. I'm not a lawyer of any kind. But people who are experts in this field says absolutely it is a violation of international law. And I think it's a violation of American law, because after 90 days under the War Powers Act, you're supposed to get authorization from Congress to engage in military activity. And this is clearly military activity. But who's to enforce international law?
Me.
You. I think, Sam, you've got to do it. And the other thing, information is starting to come out that maybe there was some drug running on some of these boats. We don't know for sure. But that the people on the boats were not the cartels. They were ordinary fishermen, ordinary workers whose families were poverty-stricken, who were making a little bit of money, maybe participating in some drug running. That does not justify executing them. If they were arrested and that was what they did, they'd get some small sentence. They would certainly not get the death penalty.
Our next question is from member Michael Gonzalez. They say, thoughts on the Justice Department suing California for Prop 50 redistricting plan while ignoring Texas's power grab?
Can you imagine a double standard?
No, that's not possible.
That's not possible.
This Justice Department is straight and narrow, right in the center, right down the line, calling balls and strikes all the time.
All the time. And by the way, the federal courts have said, we're not going to entertain any partisan gerrymandering cases. They're not, in the language of the court, they're non-justiciable. They're political issues. So I don't think that lawsuit is going anywhere. Now, some of the lawsuits against the gerrymandering in Republican states is not based on political gerrymandering, which go nowhere, but on racial gerrymandering.
Our good friend Patrick Murray asks, it seems like Governor Hochul wants to lose re-election. She says she doesn't want to help Mamdani, and her GOP rival has a ton of momentum. Thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not a big fan. I think she is playing not to lose, which is how you lose. But boy, it would be pretty hard, particularly under the current circumstances, for a Democrat to lose a statewide election in New York State. And by the way, I want to mention, since we're talking about New York, one of my oldest friends, Gerald Nadler, who was my debate partner at Stuyvesant High School more than 60 years ago in the early 1960s. Yeah.
You were in high school 60 years ago?
I hate to admit it.
Holy moly.
Yeah. I was class of 63.
What?
Yeah.
You were in high school in the 60s?
In the early 60s. I think Jerry might have been class of 64. Great guy. He's retiring. I wish him the best of luck, and he will be missed in the Congress.
A $20 donation from Mask Man Stories. They say,
all right.
I have a direct question for you, Professor. Please answer me. I'm begging you. You better answer this. They're begging
This is
you.
from
Mask Man
all right.
Stories.
Don't I answer questions directly?
I'm just reading you what they said. That's all I'm doing. They say, how has the King of Morocco managed to stay under the radar? I'm from Morocco, and I'm amazed how the American media never talks about this dictatorship.
The media is greatly diminished. They don't have the kind of foreign correspondence presence they once did, as the mainstream media, as we've talked about a lot, has kind of gone down the drain. And there's just so much else that the media has talked about. So many horrible things going on in so many parts of the world. But you make a great point, and I'm going to look into that. And maybe it'll be part of our next show, and we'll bring that to the consciousness of the American people.
Yeah, I try to stay abreast on most international developments and news and cultures and stuff like that. I've never heard of the dictator of Morocco. So.
I've heard of it, but I really haven't seen any kind of extensive coverage. But we're going to look into it.
Wyatt Ironstrong says, Professor is going to go live for another 60 years. Can you imagine? That'd be cool.
That would be good.
Yeah.
I'm all for that.
Okay.
Then I can go to my 120th high school reunion.
Wow, you'll be the only one there.
I'm almost the only one there now.
Ritonk. How do you think you spell this? Pronounce this. Ritanch. Ritonk. Ritonk. Okay, you didn't answer. Ritonk Hans.
Don't ask me.
I've seen him before, but I always screw up their name.
I can't see it.
Professor, if J.D. Vance were to become president for whatever reason, how do you think he would be? He doesn't have the same following as Trump does and likely never will, so I can't imagine him being as terrible if I had to guess.
That's a guess, and I'm not sure I agree with it. He definitely does not have Trump's pizzazz. He's almost laughable in his attempt, to be a vest pocket Donald Trump, a smudged up carbon copy of Donald Trump. It doesn't work. He's mocked. He certainly, if he is the nominee, is not going to get the charisma key, and that's going to count heavily in Democrats' favor. I think he'll try to be like Donald Trump, but I don't think he'll succeed, assuming, and that's a huge assumption, as you say, he ever does get to be president.
He might be the biggest fraud in current American politics.
Boy, that's saying a lot.
That's saying a lot.
The fraud award.
I saw a screenshot of an old tweet he had, I think from, I don't know, long before he did the whole flip-flop from being anti-MAGA to MAGA, of him criticizing Trump's connections to Epstein.
He also called, I think he compared Trump to a dictator, to a Nazi, had some of the most awful things to say about Trump.
I know,
the Epstein thing.
The Epstein stuff is in the news now, and this is another thing that he criticized Trump for, and now he's Trump's VP again. It's a strong claim, but I don't think there's a bigger fraud in American politics.
Maybe Trump is, but Trump somehow gets away with it. J.D. Vance doesn't. He just doesn't have that slippery escapability that Trump has.
The thing about Trump is that, yes, maybe 35 years ago, he was more aligned with Democrats and was even a registered Democrat. But his turn was kind of slow and over time, and there were lots of signs, the Obama birth certificate. Like, you could see him slipping to the dark side.
Correct.
Where J.D. Vance seemed to literally just be like this, and the next day be like this. So...
Yeah.
My vote.
And he's not the only. Lindsey Graham is another example of that. But J.D. Vance is by far the worst.
Oh, so is Marco Rubio. I saw a quote the other day.
Yeah, Marco Rubio is someone I can't fathom because, I didn't agree with him on a lot of things, but I respected him. I thought he was, a reasonable, thoughtful, moral public servant. Now he's just another Trump toady, totally destroying his reputation. He will go down to condemnation in history along with these other flip-floppers.
The masked man who asked the story about Morocco said Morocco was mentioned in the Epstein emails, and the victims were getting visas to be flown from Morocco to the island. I didn't know that.
I didn't see that either.
Member Miles Wolf says Trump seems to be interested in destroying symbols of Lincoln lately. For example, the bathroom and the penny cancellation. What's your analysis of this?
Because he thinks he's greater than Lincoln. That's the end of the story. He's even said it, that he's the greatest president ever, that he's accomplished more in 9 months than any president has accomplished in history, that he's the greatest president ever for African Americans. So, yes, I wrote a whole column about this. I'll see if it gets published, talking not so much about Lincoln, but about Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson was the first Democratic Republican after three Federalist presidents, three Federalist terms, Washington and Adams. The Federalists were kind of the elites. The Democratic Republicans were the more grassroots, modern type of party. And Jefferson was a firm believer in Republican simplicity. He stopped the practice of going around Washington on, this horse-drawn carriage of stiffly bowing, opened the White House to tours, shook hands instead of bowing, dressed informally. And one of the things he impressed when he got to the White House was that the White House has to mirror this Republican simple virtue. And above all, avoid the trappings of monarchy, which he hated, of course. He was, the most fervent anti-monarchist, just look at the Declaration of Independence. And Trump has absolutely shattered the Jeffersonian vision and tried to turn the White House into a version of King Louis XIV's Palace of Versailles. Jefferson must be turning in his grave.
Lincoln's my favorite president.
Mine too.
I thought yours was FDR.
FDR is certainly my favorite modern president.
Oh, okay.
It's a moot call between the two of them.
Member Comic Fan says, do you think America will invade Venezuela?
If he needs enough of a distraction, yes. It's remarkable. Trump is the master of deflection and distraction, right?
Right.
And again, as you say, everything he says about someone else is something he's done. He's accused the Democrats, right, of using Epstein to deflect and distract, even though, as you point out, he brought Epstein on himself. It wasn't the Democrats who brought this on. So I would put nothing past Donald Trump to deflect and distract. There's a whole movie about this. You must know this movie, Sam.
What?
Wag the Dog.
Oh, I've never seen it.
It's about exactly that, an administration in trouble, wagging the dog, in effect, starting a war to distract from their troubles.
That's what I keep hearing Caroline Leavitt keep saying, well, if the Democrats care so much about the Epstein files, why didn't they release it when Biden was in office? It's like, because this is Trump's thing.
Right, it
Trump
wasn't
has been promising this forever. It's Trump's thing. It's on him. And now he's backing out and people are mad. It's that simple.
Who was president when Epstein was indicted for the second time, the serious indictment? Donald Trump. Who was president when Epstein was found dead? I'm not saying committed suicide because I'm agnostic about that. But who was president when he was found dead?
Trump.
And he wants to pin this on the Democrats. Of course, remember what Trump said. Anything bad is Biden. Anything good is me.
Right. We'll do 2 more questions. How about that?
Absolutely.
2 more. It's 9:56.
Yep.
This is from Philip H. $5 donation. They say, because Allan loves these, who was the shortest serving president serving for 32 days? Who was his VP that took over after his death?
William Henry Harrison.
Wow, you're a smart guy.
Who took sick and died shortly thereafter, and John Tyler was his VP who took over.
You're a smart guy.
Pretty good, huh?
I didn't know that.
That was not an easy question.
$5 donation from Kai Rollman. They say, I'm late to the party. Doesn't the economy depend on tolerance of this Epstein scandal and the lame duck situation? Well, the market crashed today. It
was down like 800 points, yeah. And it had been wobbling for a while. There's so much negative things Trump has done. The only reason the market is sustaining is because of everything he's done for business. And again, I want to point this out because it's flown almost 100% under the radar and is of critical importance. Trump is still trying, as far as I can tell, to stymie food stamp benefits.
What?
Yeah, or at least he was right up until the 11th hour. Right. Whether he's still doing it, I'm not sure. But certainly at least to the 11th hour. And was even trying to sue the states to stop them from helping people who are going hungry. At the same time this is going on, his IRS has issued regulations, not laws, under the radar, doesn't have to be approved by anyone, giving hundreds of billions of dollars in new tax breaks to the very, very rich.
Okay, with that, we will wrap up Lichtman Live for this evening. I want to give some shout-outs to donations that didn't make the air. Joanne Roberts, Amor Agape, Keanu, and Annie's Kid. Annie's Kid said, glad you are back to your regular programming. Well, Annie, we are glad you're here with us. All right.
We love our audience.
We will wrap up Lichtman Live for this evening. Dad, what are your final words to the people?
Freddy Krueger. Trump, you cannot escape it. The more you try, the more evil will come to you.
Also, shout out to Limited Light. All right, folks, see you on Thursday. Good night.
Good night. See you on Tuesday.
Oh, it is Thursday.
It is Thursday.
Oh, see you on Tuesday. Good night.
Good night.